Welcome to Turning the Page, a Lexington Public Library podcast. I'm Miriam Adarat.
And I'm Erin West. If you love the library because of books, the programs, and the people behind both, then this is the podcast for you.
And even if you don't, there's still fun to be had. We will bring you the latest book releases that are worth checking out, figuratively and literally.
And we will discuss all of the happenings at the library to look out for.
And of course, what would a library podcast be without a special guest? We will get to know some special authors that are making an impact on our local literary scene.
Whether you're listening to us in your car while washing dishes or snuggled up with a warm drink, we are grateful for your time and hope you enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of Turning the Page. I'm Miriam, and today we're joined by acclaimed novelist Hannah Pittard. Known for her sharp wit, emotional honesty, and fearless exploration of love, loss, faith, and identity, Hannah's work invites readers to linger in the complexity of modern life. Hannah is the author of several acclaimed books, including the memoir We Are Too Many. It's a candid and widely discussed exploration of marriage, truth, and personal identity. She's also the writer behind celebrated novels such as The Fates Will Find Their Way, Reunion, and Visible Empire, all known for her wit, emotional precision, and sharp psychological insight. Her newest book, If You Love It, Let It Kill You, continues that tradition with boldness and vulnerability, diving into questions of art, obsession, and the complicated ways our lives intersect with what we create. Like much of Pittard's work, it challenges readers to sit with discomfort and to consider how honesty can be both liberating and unsettling. Across genres, Pittard has built a reputation for writing that is both intimate and unflinching, and it captures the messiness of life, often contradictory nature of human relationships with clarity and grace. So settle in and turn the page with us and enjoy this conversation with Hannah Pittard. Welcome to the podcast, Hannah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So to start out, I do like to start at the beginning. How did you get into writing? What drew you to it initially?
So I'm the youngest of three, and my older brother and older sister were, at least to my mind, incredibly outgoing, extroverted, popular people. They had a lot of friends, and I was the little geeky sidekick who was none of those things.
Tagging along.
That's right. I was the introvert to their extrovert, and I did a lot of making things up. And, just entertaining myself in my bedroom alone, making up stories, and then eventually writing them down. And, I think a classic entry into writing for a lot of people. I invented the things that didn't exist for me. And it was a way to, at first, I think, to lose time, and then a way to, occupy time and make something. But definitely it was born out of, I think, otherness and loneliness.
Yeah. And that creativity kind of grew. And when was your first big break, I guess you can say, with writing?
I think so. I started writing at a very young age, really bad stuff, horrible poems, horrible short stories. And I began taking it more seriously in high school. I was really lucky. I had a teacher he was just at my school for 1 year. He was an Irish poet, and there was this brand new kind of advanced workshop that they created my senior year of high school. And I've learned that I'm a bit of an enthusiast and therefore misread cues and signs sometimes in my enthusiasm for things. And at one point, this Irish poet, he said to everyone in the class, and there were 12 of us, he said something like, anything you have, I'll read. Whatever you've written ever, I'll read. And I immediately left class, went to the library, and printed out 98 pages of various bad stories. And stories that at this time in my life, I took myself incredibly seriously. So they were really depressing, bad, dark stories. I thought in order to be taken seriously, you had to be serious, which is something that I've happily unlearned. I think you can be a funny person and still be taken seriously and still have serious thoughts. But I printed out all of these very serious, dark stories. And then into the middle, I stuck this just 2-page kind of romance that I had written very quickly that I hadn't spent any time on and I thought was incredibly schmaltzy, but it was also the easiest thing I'd ever written. Like, it came to me very easily. And I gave him this stack of papers and, he accepted it, did not indicate in any way that what I was doing was completely insane and inappropriate, asking this man to read 100 pages of an 18, 17-year-old's like horrible stuff. And a month went by and he didn't say anything. And I thought, well, that's whatever. He's just never going to say anything. And then one day on my way into lunch, he stopped me and he said, let's talk about these. And I sat down next to him on these steps outside the lunchroom and I proceeded to watch him go through, just flip through serious story number 1, serious story number 2. And he's like, not this one, not this one, not this one, not this one. And, we're 75 pages into him not talking about a single one. And then he stopped on the 2-page romance and he said, this is exceptional. And I was just like, no, that's horrible. That's just like sentimental garbage. And he said, this is something interesting. And I thought, but that was the easy thing to write. Yeah. And so it wasn't so much a break as it was a wake-up call and a bit of an acknowledgement of A, to stop trying so hard and B, to maybe try hard differently at something else and to let myself just to be open to the things that come instinctively for me. And that's something that as a writer I've definitely leaned on. It's funny because I love teaching and I think I am a good teacher, but when I'm doing what I'm doing, I have no idea what I'm doing. It is very instinctive, but I think I am also separately able to diagnose other people's writing and to see what they're doing very effectively while having no idea what I'm doing. And it started, because of that teacher pointing that out to me, that sort of when I go at something blindly, I often hit at something.
Yeah. Do you think it was easy because it was so instinctual? Like it kind of rolled out.
Yeah.
Instead of being forced out.
I think that's right. That's right. And it's also, I talk a lot with my students about voice and style. And I think for early writers, and I say early because you can be 80 when you start writing or 70. It's not so I try to avoid the word young as much as possible. But for early writers, there's this temptation to cultivate a style and to cultivate a voice. And I think you've got to do that to a certain extent because you're experimenting. And obviously, the more you read, the more you're probably imitating the readers or the writers that you love at first. But the more you write, the more you become yourself. And I think that's the voice and the style that's instinctively there, and just trusting that the way that you craft a sentence is the right way for you to craft a sentence, that you don't need to craft it like Henry James or, like Deborah Levy. You can make your own sentence and have your own type of style. And so that, that senior year for me was the beginning of trusting myself. And I was still very capable of writing very bad things after that for a long time, by the way. but that was the beginning of trusting myself, I think.
Who were your inspirations? Like, who did you read and be like, okay, I want to do that?
So I'm from the South. I'm from Georgia. And my mother was an English teacher and a voracious reader. And Faulkner and Flannery O'Connor were big in our house, Eudora Welty. So I came up with Southerners. I definitely gravitated towards O'Connor and Faulkner because of the Gothic and the darkness. But also, especially with Faulkner, the extravagance of his sentences. I just loved how convoluted and rich and bizarre they were. It made me feel like I was working for something, which I really appreciated. Tim O'Brien was somebody else that I discovered on the younger side and absolutely adore him. And then it was really not until post-divorce, so in my mid-30s, that I started reading female writers, contemporary female writers, and that was its own education and wake-up call. It was very much like, where have these people been all my life? Oh, they've been right here. I just haven't been reading them.
You've been living in the past.
I've been living in the past. And I think, the past is important, but so is the present. And especially because I've really leaned into being not just an author, but a female author and very interested in the female experience. It was important to me to familiarize myself with the women who have already been doing this and that have trailblazed. And there are, tons of them. I just said Deborah Levy. I think she's amazing. And Annie Ernaux, obviously.
I recently started reading Annie Ernaux. Just beautiful, beautiful writing.
Beautiful, strange, aggressive.
Exactly. Did you always write with publication in mind, or at least, let's say, post high school, or did that kind of come later?
I think I would replace publication with audience. I liked getting responses from my first reader was my mother, and I loved to impress her. And so I wrote with the idea of very much coming from a storyteller's point of view. A storyteller needs an audience. They're responding to that energy in the room. And I always loved reading my work aloud. When I was little, I had two passions. One of them was acting and one of them was writing. And I think I very much married them. When I was alone in my bedroom, I would write and then I'd read it aloud. And I loved hearing when something was good or I thought something was close to being good. I loved to hear that read aloud. And then I'd kind of marvel that I made it, having no idea how I made it, right? Again, back to just being a very instinctive writer.
Your characters found a voice.
Yeah, exactly. But I definitely like getting published for sure. And I like having a broader audience. So again, audience came first, the idea of an audience. And then, I went to an MFA program because I knew that I wanted to get better and I didn't necessarily know how to get better by myself other than reading. I do believe that reading is the fastest way to improve your writing skills. And there are books that I recommend to students all the time. And there are books that I read every single summer to start off my summer to just remind myself, this is excellent writing. But I was really lucky because at the University of Virginia, I worked with Ann Beattie, and she was the one who really emphasized the art, the skill, the practice of writing, even before audience and before publication. And I think the stronger the writer I became, the more things got published. And I didn't necessarily I was very concerned about getting some of those, once I was in graduate school, getting a couple placements of short stories, because I knew that having those short stories out there meant that you might get the attention of the publishing world so that you could potentially, get a book. But for me, it was always telling a good story. Telling a good story came first. And then if I was lucky enough to get published, that was just icing on the cake.
Yeah. Moving on to your actual books. First one I wanted to talk about is We Are Too Many, your memoir. And it's pretty striking in its honesty. What gave you the courage to tell such a personal story so openly? And give us a little bit background about the memoir.
Yeah. So the memoir is the story of the demise of my marriage. So it's the story very much of my divorce. And I was married to another writer. And that was difficult for us to both be writers. And there's this horrible expression, everyone has heard of it, lead spouse. And it is incredibly difficult to be, I think, for any lead spouse to be the lead spouse in the similar profession. I think it's even harder to be a female lead spouse. And I was the female lead spouse. I was the one with published books. I was the one who went on the academic market. And then, once I secured a job, then it was my position or my role to attempt to secure a job for my husband. And I think this is hard on any marriage. And it was especially hard on ours. And so we were together 10 years. We were married only 3.5, but we were together 10 years. And he was very much my best friend and one of my best audience members as well. And I always gave him very early drafts of things I'd written, and I adored his feedback. He was very gracious, generous, but also honest. I knew that if he liked something, he really liked it. It wasn't just for show. But 3 years in, the strain of my publications and his not having a publications, I think we'd sort of maxed out what we could handle on our own without therapy, and we didn't seek therapy. And he ended up having an affair with my best friend, the woman who introduced us, actually. And that was devastating, even though we were both ready for the marriage to be over. And there was a kind of like get out of jail free card, I think, for both of us. He did the one thing that I could never forgive. And so it made that break very clean. But I ended up losing the two people outside my, immediate family that I was closest to in one fell swoop. And that was very life-changing and destabilizing, to say the least. And I had this will be surprising for people who have read the memoir, but I'm an incredibly private person. And I think I do a very good job of performing openness, especially on book tour and in interviews and things like that. And I had no intention of writing about the affair, the divorce, the marriage in any kind of nonfiction form. Except that I got a phone call from Adam Ross, who had just taken over the Swanee Review, and he had just read my book that I was promoting right at the same time, Listen to Me, about a couple in crisis. Very
Which
much
is fiction.
Very much based on my husband and me, but also fiction at the same time. And he had read that book, he loved it, and he called me to see if I would write a short story for Swanee Review. And as it so happened, I think it was 48 hours earlier that I'd found out about the affair. I'd just gotten home. I had just contacted a lawyer like that day. And I was talking to him. And within 5 minutes, I found that I was spilling my guts to him about what had happened. And we talked for 3 or 4 hours. And by the end of it, he said, I don't want a short story from you. And my first thought was, I've blown it, right? I've just basically overshared for 3 or 4 hours to this incredibly, powerful, awesome, smart editor. And now he doesn't want me to write for him anymore. And he said, I want nonfiction, and I want the story of your divorce. And I know that every nonfiction writer out there will, roll their eyes, but also laugh when I say, I thought, easy peasy, right? It's nonfiction. You don't make it up. I can do this very quickly. You just
tell your truth.
Yeah, I'll just tell my truth. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. It took me 7 months. I really think that in some ways I spent more time on this 14-page essay than I had on anything else that I'd written up until then. We went through probably 50 drafts. The first few drafts were like tell-alls, just like everything that they had ever done wrong, like all of my slights. And Adam would call me after each one and say, I'm really glad you got that off your chest. Let's try again. And he just pushed me, and I realized, okay, nonfiction is really, really hard. But we finally got to this finished product that we were both very happy with. And I thought, I've done it. That's it. We're good. But this funny thing happened after I wrote that essay. I would go around promoting various other books, novels, all of them fiction. And inevitably, people would have read that essay, and they would say, what's the real story? Or what did you leave out? And I found that a lot of people wanted that tell-all stuff that had been cut and left on the editing room floor. But I didn't necessarily want to give that away or to share that. And it wasn't until COVID happened and fiction suddenly stopped making any sense to me. I had no idea why anybody would make anything up when the stuff that was happening outside my window and my front door felt as unreal to me and to everyone else as anything I've ever experienced.
We were living a Hollywood movie.
We absolutely were. And I was like, why would I make anything up? And I understand a lot of people pushed into fantasy at that time, and they pushed into other worlds. And that makes a ton of sense to me. I suddenly went all nonfiction all the time. I stopped reading fiction. I just wanted to be anchored in, the tangible, the concrete, the real. And for some reason, that sort of isolation plus this newfound interest in nonfiction, these conversations that I'd had that I thought I'd dealt with, but these conversations that I'd had with my former best friend, with my now ex-husband, they started coming back to me. And I really, truly thought, by then it was about 5 years that I'd been divorced. So I thought I was over it, but the conversations were still there. So I started writing them down, and I shared the first 10 pages with a reader who I've known for a very long time, and he loved them. And so I shared those 10 pages with my agent, and she loved them, and she said, just keep going. So I kept going and I kept going, and I realized finally that I was working on a memoir.
Yeah.
And part of what gets you through a memoir like this, a personal memoir, or part of what got me through was not necessarily believing that it would ever see the light of day.
Yeah.
So I just kept going, and I put a lot of very intimate stuff in there, again, thinking there's a really good chance no one's going to want this. But I hope someone wants it, because why else am I doing it except to make connections and to share this story with other people and, hope that I might make a difference in someone else's world or someone else's life. But the audacity of being so honest and so vulnerable, it really does help thinking about the time between writing and publication, which is a long time. It's usually a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I worked for a long time on the memoir.
Was it almost like a catharsis that you needed to go through in order to move on?
Not so, yes and no, not intentionally, but having written the book, those conversations are gone.
Yeah.
The voices in my head, they are not there anymore. And it could be that it's simply time that has erased them, but I do think writing them down, getting them out has absolutely cleared that sort of noise in my brain, and I am grateful for it. And I do think that counts as a catharsis for sure.
Yeah. Your next book that came out, so If You Love It, Let It Kill You, came out after your memoir.
Yeah.
So it has such a striking title. What does that phrase mean to you?
So I've already used the word enthusiast once. My family, we are a family of enthusiasts. We commit to things very much whole hog, for better or for worse. And my father, decades ago now, brought home this expression one day: if you love it, let it kill you. And my brother and my sister and I said, no, Dad, it's if you love it, set it free. And he said, no, it's if you love it, let it kill you. And at the time we thought that was hilarious, this corruption of the friendlier, if you love it, set it free. But we all glommed onto it. And so it's just been this saying that we've had, especially between my siblings and me and our partners, just everyone that we've ever dated, been married to, they hate it. They think this, they're just like, stop with the if you love it, let it kill you. We're constantly threatening to get it tattooed. So this is like the closest I've gotten to a tattoo by titling a book this. Yeah, but I think it speaks to a kind of reckless and passionate enthusiasm for life.
Yeah. And what inspired the books, the themes behind this book?
This was an accident. This was very similar to the memoir. This was an accident. The day that we were going, and this sounds apocryphal, but the day that we were going to announce on Publishers Marketplace the memoir was the same day that my agent sent me an email, the title of which, the subject line read, "Have you seen this?" I opened it up and it was just a screen grab announcing my ex-husband's debut. So everything paused right then. We decided not to announce my memoir. There was a lot of chatter that day. But for me, there was also this feeling of irreality and a bit of insanity, because I read and reread and then reread again the synopsis of his novel, and it was the description of my memoir, which is to say his novel's plot was our marriage, his affair with my best friend, and our divorce. And this was another destabilizing moment, because I had no idea what it would look like, this novel. I could imagine that I would be very poorly portrayed in it. And I did everything I could to find out about it and could find nothing. So by then it had been about 7 years since we'd been divorced. And I did something I hadn't done since we had separated, which was I Googled him. And I Googled the book, and I could not find anything about the book, but I found a short story that he had published and several years earlier. And in the short story, it was there was a character that was just like me, an academic, gotten tenure in the same number of years, dating now her former chair as I was. And in the story, there is a husband that's just like my husband who has an affair with the wife's best friend. So it was clearly a sort of
very similar.
yeah, right. And it was his prototype for the novel, basically. So I read this story that I had no idea he had published 3 years earlier, and I read it with great interest. And I was surprised when I got to the part in the story where he murders me. Not his character, but my character is murdered by an unhoused person, knifed to death. And I sat back and I thought about this for a long time. And I thought, I can either be very disturbed by this or I can find this incredibly funny. And I couldn't help but find it incredibly funny. And, I called Ada Limon at the time and I was like, Ada, I've been walking around 3 years murdered. I had no idea. And she did not think it was funny. She thought it was very disturbing. My sister thought it was incredibly funny too. And my boyfriend also found it a bit disturbing. But so this same day that I found out that he's going to publish a novel in which there will very clearly be a not flattering version of me, I also discovered that he's written a story in which I've been murdered, and I sat down and I started writing about it. And I did not think that it would necessarily be a novel. I have always gravitated towards writing about things that don't make sense to me, confuse me, that I can't stop thinking about. And certainly I could not stop thinking about this strange confluence of events. And so this one little vignette led to another little vignette. And the next thing I know, I had like 60 pages and I just kept going from there. And so it starts with a middle-aged woman who is a mid-list author who finds out that her ex-husband is publishing, a book about her, for better or for worse, or more or less. So it begins that way, but it very much, deviates and becomes something else entirely.
Yes.
That's just the sort of the diving board, if you will, for a midlife crisis and, a romp
book
through
about,
the absurd.
Art.
Yeah, exactly.
Obsessive art.
Yeah, exactly.
And as creative life can be sometimes. So did working on this project kind of, change the way that you think about your ambition in writing or creativity in any way?
So I'll say a couple of things about this book. It was the most fun I've ever had writing this book. And one thing that I didn't realize I was going to do until it was done was have an actual epiphany in real life. And it's the epiphany that the narrator has on the page. And I had it at the same time that she had it. And it was accidental and it was completely revelatory for me. And that is, my entire career as a writer, I have stolen from my own life. A lot of writers do this. Lauren Groff will say everything that a writer writes is autobiographical. I don't care what you say. And that
Interestingly, sorry to cut you off, but I had just done an author event with Patty Callahan Henry, and she said the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, there's always something, a little piece of you ends
absolutely.
up in your book.
It doesn't matter if you're inventing, a planet and a new way of breathing. It's coming from you and your experiences and, the environment in which you've been raised. So the epiphany that I had and that the narrator has is, again, talking about stealing from your own life. One thing that I had never really reckoned or grappled with was what would happen if somebody wrote about me.
Yeah.
And I've always gotten permission from my family when I fictionalize them. Maybe I write it first and then I get permission afterwards, but I've always gotten permission, at least from, the people who are very close to me, that if there's any possibility that they might be recognized. If it's a stranger on the street, I don't get permission, right? If it's something that I've overheard, I don't get permission. But this was knowing that my ex-husband was writing about me, even if it was fictionalized. That was something that I'd never had to grapple with, even though people around me have been dealing with that and dealing with me doing it to them for as long as they've known me. And so that was a sort of mirror in front of me moment where I had to think about, is this going to shift what I do? Will this change how I navigate my own artistic endeavors? And what I realized was, this isn't really giving away the end at all, but it is kind of this amazing thing to
Yeah.
be to make such an impression on someone that they do want to steal your character.
Yeah.
And they can corrupt it, they can make it prettier, they can make it uglier, but it doesn't matter. It's just there's something kind of amazing about becoming a character in somebody else's story. And I let go of a lot of, I think, need for control and just accepted it. And the acceptance of allowing someone to, in part, you're allowing them to do it because it is out of your control, but accepting that was really quite wonderful.
Yeah.
And my narrator makes that discovery, and in real life, I made that discovery.
On the note of kind of letting go, you recently announced that If You Love It, Let It Kill You the rights to it has been purchased by the great Marissa Tomei.
Marissa Tomei, yes.
So what was that like?
Amazing. I adore Marissa Tomei. I've been a fan of her forever since her biological clock was ticking, So she's just one of these weirdos in Hollywood that, you kind of can't take your eyes off. I think she's such a legend and an icon. And I think it must have come through my agent that she got an email from somebody who works closely with Marissa who said that, she was interested in this book in particular.
Yeah.
And then that initial email led to a FaceTime and just a one-on-one FaceTime with Marissa and me. And she's so smart, so intense, so strange, like exactly what you want her to be. And basically, she loves the book. She loved the strong female lead. She loved the weirdness of it and the absurdity of it. And to quote a bad movie, like she had me at hello. Like, I would have been like, here, take my baby too while you're at it. I don't care. So but basically what that means is she's got the rights right now to take it to production companies and hopefully find somebody who believes in the story as much as she does.
Yeah.
And then the idea would be eventually a movie. But, I'm just happy knowing that I will be able to say on my deathbed that Marissa Tomei, at least for a moment, knew who I was.
Yeah.
And liked one of my books. That's okay.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Hopefully it does see the screen very soon. That'll be a good one. So you've written both fiction and memoir. How do you approach the different genres, I guess you could say? Do you find that there's more freedom when you're writing fiction, or?
I think fiction will always be the most free. So there's this genre that If You Love It is in, which is autofiction, autobiographical fiction, right? And in some way, I don't know that I'll ever write another autobiographical fictional novel to the same degree where there's literally a character named Hannah just misspelled, right?
Yeah.
She's missing something. She's missing an N and an H. She's missing more than that, like some marbles as well. And like her sense of like reality. But I think autofiction in some ways provides the most freedom because you can say anything and you can hide behind fiction. You can say, yeah, but that part's not me. That part I've made up. But you can be even more honest than in a memoir, I think, because at the end of the day, in the memoir, you are still controlling the perception of yourself. I'm very comfortable, for instance, talking about the eating disorder that I had. And I thought that was a very important part of the memoir because that insecurity that I had clearly was part of what allowed me to be so seduced by these people who didn't have that insecurity. They reeked of sort of confidence. And I was very drawn to that. And I was drawn to it because I didn't have it. And the way it manifested for me was, body dysmorphia, shame, and the various food disorders. And I actually love talking about that because I think there's just so much shame around that, and there shouldn't be. It's a disease. It is a societal disease. It's a biological disease, and I hate the way that it is so prevalent. And it's also, I think, when it infects a household, the temptation is to be quiet about it,
Yeah.
and as though it is anyone's fault, and it's not. So that was really important for me to put on the page, but there's still plenty of stuff that I left out that I did put in the autofiction, and what that is, I will never have to say, but
Yeah.
it's certainly part of what makes that character. I think if you find her rich at all, it's what gives her a verticality and a depth.
Yeah. There's definitely a character development with her. It's very interesting for those that are going to be reading the book. So you've already released several books, which is amazing. What books are you currently working on, or do you plan on releasing anything soon?
I hope so. I mean, this comes back to your question of like, do you write for publication?
Yeah.
Yes. At this point, I certainly do. But I write also because it's just like you wake up and you've got this motivation. It's just, you feel it, like this nagging need and desire to write, even when it's hard and it's painful. There's nothing as satisfying in my life as finishing something or working on something and getting language on the page. It is, for me, it is the reason. It's the reason that I wake up in the morning. I need it, even when I hate it. But yes, so I actually have a book on the market right now, out with editors, and that process is, I think, more difficult than ever, especially for mid-list writers, and that is certainly what I am. But actually having a book find a home, there's no guarantee anymore, and it can take 2 days or it can take 2 years. And I think one of the really important things for me is to have multiple projects going on. So while that is, languishing out there and I have no idea.
Percolating.
Again, like percolating. Editors could be like deleting it or putting it under their pillow. I have no idea. Or forgetting about it, that it's even in their inbox. I have no idea. So I've got a thriller that I have finished. Almost every book I've written is very different from the last book. I like entertaining myself.
That's very interesting to me that you're writing like multiple things and they're all different.
I like new things. I like challenging myself. So I love Stephen King. I love horror. I'm not capable of writing horror yet. I love watching horror. I love reading horror. I love mysteries. I love thrillers. And a couple years ago, I thought, why not try a thriller? If I love it so much, why not try it? And again, I think I had to navigate around a certain sense of myself as a literary author.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I'm so tired of these like genres and these like boundaries and like these. Like,
no
I
one
feel like
writes
I'm
like that
gatekeeping
anymore.
myself sometimes. Like, no, it must be. No, it mustn't be. It can be anything, right? So I just decided to write the thing that I love reading, and so I've got a thriller out there, and it's loosely a thriller. I mean, it's about it tackles the real estate market, income inequality, public education. And so that's, I've just got to like let that go, understanding that it may or may not get picked up. And presumably if it got picked up, I would have to work on it again. But in the meantime, so that I'm not simply checking my email every day.
Obsessing about.
And obsessing. I have another thing that I'm working on that's a novella that's a little bit quieter, stranger. And I've never written a novella before, so that would be new as well. But yeah, I've always got like multiple irons in the fire. I have to. Yeah. And then there's usually some like wonk essay that I'm working on as well about education. I've recently like leaned into the grass is greener on the and get off my lawn stage of academia, so that I've had a couple pieces come out recently against AI and, in favor of handwriting in the classroom and things like that. So I usually have something nonfiction like that I'm working on as well, just to,
It'll be interesting to read. I'd love your take on AI.
I'll send them to you.
Hot topic right now.
It's
very
every
hot.
morning I wake up and there's something from inside higher education that's like either here's why AI is necessary to you in the classroom, or here's how to keep it out of your classroom. It's just like, Make it disappear.
Make it disappear. Leave it out of education, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your upcoming book. We'll look forward to it. We do always end our podcast with rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So if you're up to it,
Let's do it.
move. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So first question, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Ah, nice. Writing early in the morning or late at night?
Late at night.
Late at night. Okay. What's your favorite spot to write in, whether it's in Lexington or Kentucky or wherever?
McDowell in New
McDowell.
Hampshire, in a cabin, or specifically the James Baldwin Library. There is a little nook. It's called the Amanda Davis Nook in the James Baldwin Library, and it is where I've written 2 books.
Wow, that's
and I love it. It's heaven. You can sometimes see a whole, I don't know what you call a group of turkeys, a gaggle of turkeys, not a murder, but whatever one of those fun words is.
Yeah.
There's like always a family of turkeys, or like occasionally deer. Yeah, it's just magical.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to Google that and see if there's any pictures.
Beautiful.
A book you wish you could read again for the first time?
Anagrams by Lori Moore.
I'll have to write this down. Anagrams?
Anagrams by Lori Moore. It's also a book I wish I'd written. I read it and I thought, the first time I finished it, I thought, well, what's the point? She's done the thing that I have always dreamed of doing. And then I realized, well, just be inspired instead. I teach the book. It is so strange. It is marvelous. It's wonderful at the line level. It's funny. It's heartbreaking. I used to read the last page aloud after I'd teach it to my class. And then I think people started telling each other, one class to the next one, to try to get me to read aloud, because I'd start off laughing and then I'd be in tears, kind of hyperventilating, because it's just so beautiful and so funny and moving at the same time. Anagrams. Yeah.
All right. I'll look into it. Well, the next question is kind of obvious. A character you relate to most from your own books.
Hannah P. Hannah P. from If You Love It, Let It Kill You.
Of course. Yeah. Favorite snack while writing?
Ooh, I love these little ginger thins in the winter. If I will have tea in the winter, only because there's only so much caffeine I can get out of, and still sleep, middle age, etc. But I do love like a little stale ginger, very gingery, spicy cookie. Yeah.
Oh, nice. What's one thing that you always edit out?
Ooh, as much in my own life as I love profanity, and I'm so proud of myself for not having used it once during this interview. Thank you. I try hard to always edit that out unless it is absolutely essential. I think of profanity as a cliche. It's usually there because it's a substitute for something that you just haven't found yet. With the rare exception, but yeah.
So use that as a placeholder, then come back to it.
And it's not a morality thing. It is simply, it's just, I think that I'm typically being lazy when I use it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
If You Love It, Let It Kill You, if it had a theme song, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. Maybe something from, boy, this one's tough. I was going to say like Hayes Carl, because I listened to a lot of Hayes Carl while writing it, but I don't know. I'm thinking
Maybe something by Amy Winehouse.
Something absurd.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like insert absurd song here. Like I can't think of anything. Like my brain just, I don't know.
There is a song by Amy. I cannot think of it. I don't know.
Back to Black.
Yeah.
I mean, that one's a good one.
Yeah. If you weren't a writer, what job would you try? I know that you're a professor of English.
But if I could be anything, I would be a stand-up comedian.
Okay.
Oh yeah, 100%. It is my dream job, but I do not think I'm depressed enough. I think that I really truly think that you have to have a darkness in order to be that funny. But it is. I watch people on stage and I envy it all the time.
You should try it. I'm going to see Zarna Garg soon, and I'm excited. And I love that she started kind of late in life.
Yeah.
But,
I just need my 45 seconds, right?
Yes.
That's what they say. Like, you just need your 45 seconds.
And then finally, what is the best compliment a reader could give you?
I'm pretty chuffed when people thank me for having written something. There's an authenticity to the simplicity of just thanking
Yeah.
someone. So I think just that it goes a long way. I mean, I have, especially with the memoir, you can probably imagine, I've gotten a lot of emails from strangers, men and women, thanking me, but also specifically finding something in it, either having been betrayed or, having had similar issues with their body, and just people being grateful that you've shared something so that they feel a connection to somebody and they feel a little less alone. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But the simplicity of a thank you is, I'll
It's
take
nice,
it. Yeah.
And it's perfect. It encompasses, an experience that you shared with the author. So
Exactly.
why not thank the author?
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you
Thank you.
for joining us on the podcast. We really appreciate this candid conversation. And we look forward to seeing what you come out with next.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. So now we're going to talk about books.
Yes.
So there are 3 books that I'm excited about that are going to be coming out in June.
Okay.
Of course, the great Ann Patchett has a new book out that everybody's excited about called Whistler.
Yeah.
And it's the story of Daphne Fuller. She kind of reunites incidentally with a stepfather that she had for like a hot minute. Her mom is passed away and her stepfather is elderly. So they meet again.
Yeah.
And it just talks about how like that moment in life, even though it's short, has such a big impact on the trajectory of both their lives. Yeah. So they reunite and they kind of rebuild their relationship basically. And actually Whistler, apparently, from what I've seen in interviews with Ann Patchett, is a horse that is in the story, but it's actually mentioned like very, very briefly. But that horse has an impact on both of them, so that's why she decided to go with Whistler. And Patty Callahan Henry, who we recently had for an author visit, said she got to read an advance copy of this book, so I'm a little jealous. But she's the one that's told me that I have to read this book, even though I am a fan of Ann Patchett. She didn't really need to push me too hard. I love Tom Lake. It's one of my favorite books, so I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
And then I'll be honest with you, the name of this book really struck me.
Yeah.
And it's called The Jellyfish Problem. And reading the summary, I'm like, okay, I cannot wait to read this one. I haven't been able to get an advanced reader's copy of this one, but I think it's going to be interesting. So Dr. Jo Ness, she researches jellyfish. She kind of prefers jellyfish over people. And she had a really good friend, Aldo, that was also into, the oceanography and all that. But he died. She's kind of grieving his death and stuff. So one day, another friend of hers that she has kind of lost touch with, she receives a phone call from this friend, and she kind of alerts her to this huge jellyfish that is off the coast of Maine, I believe, is where the setting is. And so Jo goes to this area, Shattering Point, but she can't find Nadia, the friend that told her about this jellyfish. So it's a little bit of a mystery, and also about this community and how they've kind of are all up in arms about this huge, weird jellyfish. Yeah.
Snatching people.
Exactly. So it's interesting. So I think it'll be a good story.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah. And then the other one, also the name kind of drew me, called Heather. And it kind of reminded me of, the movie Heathers.
Yeah.
Way back in the day. This one is also a mystery. The summary goes, in the myth of Riddled Woods in New Jersey, Pine Barrens, a 16-year-old Annabelle Riley's twin sister, Sabrina, has been having an affair with a mysterious older man, and Annabelle is determined to uncover what's going on. Her sister disappears.
Of course.
So in the same town, years later, newly instated police chief Callie Hauser makes an arrest that unexpectedly resurrects details from a heartbreaking cold case. And so as she digs deeper, the past and the present kind of collide, challenging everything that Callie believes about right and wrong, who she is, and the town she's always called home. So it is a mystery. And so I just, was drawn again to the name because it reminded me of the movie, but kind of bears a reminder that, the truth of a woman's life is often complicated and unknowable. Yeah. So to those on the outside, and sometimes even to herself. So it's, kind of like a learning experience for her, and a mystery about her sister's death. So those are the kinds of books I like. So I'm looking forward to those.
Although I did note that the past was set in 1990.
Yes.
Which feels wrong. I just want to say.
1990 is the old age.
Yes.
Oh my
That's 10 years
goodness.
ago.
That is literally. No, it's not, Erin. Sorry. Sorry to tell you. It's not. Yep, it's set in 1990.
Yeah.
Historical.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. So those are the books that are coming out in June.
Yay.
Get your holds in quickly so that we can get your books out to you.
Yes, very exciting. Welcome to Behind the Scenes, the part of turning the page when we look behind the book cover to talk to library staff whose work happens out of the public eye. Today, I'm excited to talk with Sonia Abrams and Alyssa Kuhn-Harris from our Collection Services Department. So thank you for joining me today on the Behind the Scenes for Turning the Page. We are just bringing this segment back, so I'm really excited to have both of you as my new first guests.
We're happy to be here.
So can you tell our listeners who you are and what you do for the library?
I guess I'll go first. My name is Sonia Abrams. My title is Collection Development Coordinator, and I do a few different things for the library. I help maintain and select titles for our digital collection on Libby. I'm the librarian who oversees our interlibrary loan services. I work with our replacement teams in the system during our annual read and replace cycle to help get them their replacements and to schedule tasks in Collection HQ. And I help with any special projects that come up.
My name is Alyssa, and my sort of technical title is cataloging specialist, but my specialty within that is children and teens materials. So I catalog and add to the collection all of the children's fiction and nonfiction, and then teens fiction and nonfiction as well.
Great. So what does a typical day, Alyssa, what does it look like for you?
That's such a good question because I feel like we haven't really had a typical day for the last 6 months or more. And that's just the powers that be changing book vendors and people retiring and just sort of all manner of things. But typically, I come in, I sit down, I pull off the carts all of the patron requests. We have a particular way of flagging books that are on hold and that patrons have specifically requested. And so I will pull all of those to catalog those first thing. That's the first thing I want to do to make sure people have access to what they're looking for. And then I will take a peek into our help desk system. The help desk system is just for staff to communicate with us, and they can put in a ticket for any number of things, books not being converted, or call numbers they think should be changed, go through that system. And then I just try to spend all day, cataloging, just pushing books through so that I don't disrupt sort of the flow. Collection Services is a really well-oiled machine. When we're all doing what we need to do and making sure things flow through so that all the books can be delivered to all the branches.
And Sonia, what does a typical day look like for you when you have one?
When I have one, that's a good way to to phrase the question. Well, so I do start every single day in the same way, which is working in our collection on Libby. So every morning I process a cart of digital titles that have reserve lists, and I buy extra copies of those high demand titles. And then after that, I'll jump into a particular kind of task. Since I do lots of different kinds of things, I do try to batch similar types of things together so that I'm not constantly switching gears. So after Libby is done, I might have a day where I work on replacements, or I might work on Collection HQ assignments, or I might work on interlibrary loan things like requesting KDLA book kits or paying invoices for lost materials, things like that. Yeah, so every day is different, like in terms of its main focus, but the starting point is always Libby.
And what's your favorite part of your workday?
I feel like my favorite thing is when I complete a task or a project, and that could be anything. It could be I just built a cart of replacements on Ingram and I've got that order submitted. Or I just did a batch of invoices that I've turned into the business office. Just any sort of little win. I think that there's always more to do. There's always more on the to-do list. And so it's important to have that moment to like celebrate a win or even just like a moment of resolution because that kind of gives me the little boost of energy to go on to the next thing.
And Alyssa, how about you? What's your favorite part of your workday?
That's such a good answer, and now I feel silly for my answer, like, that is such a good answer because I
No.
totally relate to the feeling of being able to just, like, cross something off, or I guess in my case, like, finishing a cart. We work in small chunks on smaller carts because, it would be so, I think, overwhelming to work with all of these boxes that are just part of one order. And so being able to push that out of my cubicle and on to the next step is really satisfying. The other thing I will say is getting to talk to my coworkers about books. We call it reader's advisory, but it's be keeping abreast of sort of the publishing trends and like when the new Bad Guys movie is being released. And so we buy a bunch of copies of that book when the new Diary of a Wimpy Kid gets published, right? And those are always fun conversations to have.
You mentioned processing items earlier, Alyssa. Can you tell us what goes into processing an item for the collection?
Yeah, absolutely. So it we have several members of the team that help the department kind of run really smoothly. Teresa unpacks the boxes that we get from book vendors, and she does some cross checking between um, purchase orders and packing slips. That's the word. And she puts them on carts. Uh, by sort of subject matter. I work off of a cart and I do the cataloging. So I look up the mark record in the system, download it from OCLC, and make any sort of necessary local practice changes. So every library is different. Every library does it a little bit different. We use the Dewey Decimal System. Some libraries use the Library of Congress call numbers. For fiction materials, we use E for the lowest age group, J, and teen. So making those kind of judgment calls as I'm looking at the material, making sure that the mark record is complete, and then saving that to the system so it can be found in the pack. I might put barcodes on something, I might put location stickers on something, and then I push that on to the next step in the system, and Leanne prints out the call numbers and puts the spine label stickers on, and then transfers those to the bins that Eric will then take to all the branches.
There's a lot more than what you think would go in.
Yes.
Like you'd think, it comes pre-done. You just throw it in a bin and you're done. But there's a lot more to it.
Back in the day, while Baker and Taylor was still doing its thing, a lot of the stuff did show up with a lot of that, physical stuff done, the barcodes, the spine, not the, sometimes the spine labels, you know, the plastic cover. So it was a little more plug and play. And now, that's not the case anymore. And we've been very lucky that we've had a lot of help from other departments and other locations who come in to help us do just simple things like stickering because like stickering thousands of books takes a lot of time. Made a big difference to not have things come that way and have to do it all in house.
Absolutely. We were very spoiled by Baker and Taylor, RIP. But the sort of camaraderie, the feeling has been really good these past couple of weeks of people come up from public service who have no idea what we do or that it worked this way at all are getting a better insight. And I think it's helping kind of cross those silos, right, of like frontline versus behind the scenes kind of silos that people fall into. And I think it's been, well, first of all, it's been immensely helpful, but I also think it's been really, really good for that culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
And like we get the feedback too, without like not only are they seeing what we're doing before the book gets to them, but also if there's something that we are doing that's actually making things harder for them, there's a more immediate sense of like feedback and of realizing like what we could do to make things easier for them, or if we can't make something easier, like why that is.
Mhm.
It's been
Yeah.
really cool to work together these past few months in that way.
Absolutely.
So, Sonia, can you tell us what goes into managing a 6 branch system's physical and digital items?
Well, it's complicated. No, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's definitely a team effort. So we have a team of about 4 people who do the bulk of the selecting for the system, and that's across adult and children's and teen, and for both physical and digital. And in addition to those 4 people, there's also several other staff members throughout the system who help with different types of selecting, usually in an area where they have a particular expertise. And when we're choosing new titles to add to the collection, our primary selection team is looking through professional reviews of books. They're keeping up with news about new titles coming out from best-selling authors, just generally keeping an eye on multiple reputable sources of literary news so that we're using that kind of information to fuel our purchases rather than just sort of buying randomly or guessing. And when the selection team has chosen things, we buy more copies of titles that we expect to have more demand. But then we also have a system in place to monitor hold lists on titles so that if a title gets really popular or gets more popular than we expected, we can buy additional copies so that our customers don't have to wait longer just because reserve lists have gotten longer. And then I mentioned before, we've got a lead replace cycle. So we've got librarians at every location who monitor their particular branch's collection and weed out things that our customers aren't interested in or that are in poor condition. And then they're building the list of things that they want or need to replace. So we've got a cycle kind of leading us through original titles, replacement title, the life of the book, and so on and so forth. I think it's a lot to keep track of. I'm actually, grateful that our system isn't any bigger than it is. I don't know how, huge city systems with more branches than 6 do it, but I do think that we've got a really good selecting team that does a good job of communicating with each other about what we need for the system and why we're choosing what we get. I don't know if that I don't know if that actually made any
No, it totally does. Yeah.
sense.
And I remember watching the Game Changer series after the television series for Heated Rivalry came out. Like new ones would just pop onto the record almost
Yeah.
daily, just as they went through that hold ratio.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Even now, like yesteryear is very big right now. And so it seems like every few days we get a few more copies come in because we've placed another order. Let's see, the new Catherine Stockett title, we've been getting multiple rounds of orders in for, and Theo of Golden is another title that we've recently had where we've made multiple attempts at ordering to keep up with the demand for it, both physically and digitally.
All right. And to wrap us up, what are you two reading?
So I am currently reading Saint Death's Daughter by C.S.E. Cooney. And I just started it last night, so I'm not very far into it. We'll see how it goes. But it won the World Fantasy Award for Best Novel in 2023. And it's about a family of necromancers who are basically the hired killers for the royal family of their country. And the parents are murdered. Shocking for hired killers, I'm sure. And their 2 daughters are left to sort of deal with the aftermath. And the daughter, who's the main character, is literally allergic to violence. So that makes her not quite fit in with the rest of her necromancer family.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
My
It sounds really fun. I'm very hopeful that it will be amazing. We shall see.
I'm gonna add that to my TBR. That sounds
Yeah,
really
same.
good. I am currently working through a self-initiated curriculum, shall we
Oh,
say?
fun.
Kind of a popular trend, the personal curriculum.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
I'm trying to deepen my spiritual practice. So the book I'm reading right now is called Lighting the Wick, and Intuitive Guide to the Ancient Art and Modern Magic of Candles. And it's very delightful. The authors are Sandra Mariah Wright and Leanne Marima. I probably butchered that last name, but they also wrote a book about reading tea leaves. And so that sounds like it's going to be fun as well.
That does sound fun. Yeah.
And see, now this is my time when I feel silly for my answer because they're like, "Oh, I'm deepening my spiritual practice." And I'm like, "I'm reading a fun fantasy book about necromancers."
Not at all.
No,
Well,
I love the range. The range is amazing.
yeah, exactly. It's more fun that way.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you both so much for coming on the show and telling us more about your jobs that, we don't necessarily get to see in the public facing world of the library. We just see the books. We don't see your all's hands in them. So I'm glad to be able to kind of shine a light on that for everybody.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Erin. This was a delight.
Thank you for tuning into Turning the Page. If you enjoyed listening, there will be more to come, so please give us a follow so that you don't miss the next episode.
We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.